Welcome to the Hog Market Talk podcast, your weekly deep dive into hog market fundamentals, breaking news, and industry insights. Trading commodity futures and options involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors.
All right, today is July 1st. I've got Jeff with us here today. How's it going, Jeff?
It's going pretty good, Mike.
Good. Well, this is a Hog Talk podcast here. Let's get started. Let's start on the cash side. What are you seeing with some cash fundamentals here this week?
Well, I think week over week we're doing okay on that front, Mike. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to see a lot higher bids than what we saw the past several weeks. We've been kind of stuck in that $98 range, and quite a few participants willing to pay that, which, of course, compared to what remains to be a very lousy cutout, that's a high bid, right? So shouldn't be complaining about that. That does still signal that some packers are expressing some willingness to own some pigs at some pretty good values and some negative margins on their end. So that's not bad news. We were hoping to we could get another $1 out of that market or something this week. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but probably more important than all that, we had one of the major packers was non-existent in that marketplace for 4 or 5 weeks, and they are coming back with some needs and some pretty good bids. So I would say we've got pretty much everybody participating from the packer side here this week. So as you kind of think about the necessary steps for us to shorten the supply a little bit, I think that's one of the benchmarks that we're crossing, right? Is, okay, yeah, maybe prices aren't going up, but the needs are increasing. So maybe I'm stretching a little, Mike, but we're going to count it as a win.
Anything specifically around this week, July 4th, anything to take from scheduling?
Well, so we continued to lose a little bit of schedule here as last week went on. I do think we're still banking on getting real close to a 2 million kill, which is going to be a pretty large one. But specifically, as you think about the cash market, and a lot of us think about it as, well, it's July 4th, so it's going to be softer, shortened harvest week, right? But that's actually, you have to be one step ahead of that. So this is actually the week where you're going to buy for the first full weeks after the holiday, right? So last week should have been the softer week because of the holiday and the shorter week. This one, we should be getting a full look at a 5-day operating week and a better view of what the market actually looks like. So it's a kind of one of those things you have to kind of step back and think through just a little bit as you're thinking about the cash values.
Let's wrap up with cash and kind of work our way over to more of the demand side here, Jeff. We had posted a pretty rough cutout number again last night. Talk to me about what you're seeing in product values here, and especially I want to talk specifically about hams.
You bet. So, yeah, obviously continue to be very disappointed in this marketplace. A few things that, kind of noticing this week. One is, and we talked about this last week some, we just ran out of the seasonal time frame for that thing to rally, right? So we might not be just overly surprised that we're going through another week here after we missed that May-June rally, that we're going through another week of, sideways to maybe even a little bit lower cutout. That actually is the seasonal here. Once you get past the 4th of July, around the 7th or the 8th, you look at almost any of the seasonals, and even including 2024, which was the last summer that really disappointed us, we saw some really nice rallies starting at that time. So that, to me, is still very much in the cards, Mike. Time will tell. So back, you mentioned the hams, and that's a good one to look at. Another thing that we've been noticing or think we've experienced is some fire sales of some of the primal products, right? And hams were a good one. Butts would be another one to stare at a little bit, but we are seeing some of those bounce back here, and hams specifically. They went down to that $75 range. They're back up into the mid-80s here. So good news on either somebody that had a few too many of them had to get rid of some. That might be over with. We also talked in the past couple of weeks about the challenges that we are seeing in Mexico right now. Maybe we got some of that market back too, Mike. It's we haven't seen it show up like on the weekly data much, but maybe this week will be the week that we see a bit of an uptick on some of the movements back over to Mexico.
Talking about this week being the week, let's talk about some of the weather that we've been experiencing here. Very hot week. What kind of impact is that going to have on weights here, you think?
Well, we are seeing carcass weights, fairly aggressively moving lower. I think, we're probably getting through this heat just a little bit better than what we anticipated. I'm not completely ready to write this off as far as significantly adjusting the weights lower. We'll continue to take weight off these pigs. Some of that is very much seasonal. Maybe most of that's very much seasonal, right? So to say that we're going to be down, a week from now more than what would be a seasonal adjusted, I'm not sure of that anymore. A week ago when I was looking at forecast, thinking yes, that would be very much the case, but we're getting pretty cool at night. We're experiencing some rains in the western part of the belt for sure, as well as parts of the eastern. So seems like we might get along just a little better than what we thought. Now, that's, compared to a year ago, we might not make a ton of progress. We, of course, will make a lot of progress from here until about the end of July as just weights in general. They go down every year. That's still going to take some pounds off the market and should help us take a good swing at that seasonal cutout rally starting here next week.
It seems like supply hasn't been the problem thus far, so I wanted to talk just a little bit more about the demand side. You talked about exports and hams in Mexico. One of the things I wanted to bring up that sometimes gets mentioned in the ag world, but not a ton, or at least given a lot of weight, is the U.S. dollar. Now, there's been a trend lately. We've seen an appreciating dollar. It's been rallying pretty recently, a hard level above 101 here today. It's up about 2% over the last month, up almost 5% over the past year here, Jeff. And one of the things that we see is you've had a new Fed chairman come in, and it looks like the Fed is going to remain somewhat hawkish at this time. They're going to try to raise rates more than cut them here in the near future, rounding out the rest of this year. And one thing to help back this up is we've had some stronger employment data that's helped back this up, and really that's reduced a lot of the expectations for any aggressive rate cuts going forward, which we're still in question. And if you look, higher interest rates generally are going to attract money into the dollar-denominated assets here, Jeff. So if you look at U.S. economic data has been better than a lot of our competitors, so the money's really ran towards the U.S. dollar there. You've seen safe haven buying as well during this war. The dollar's been a very quick recipient to any fund inflows because of the Iran conflict, which still isn't over. It seems like the oil side, we've pulled every lever we kind of can to milk that thing lower, kind of pull out of the reserves. We've exported oil globally. China's stopped importing a lot of oil. So the dollar side has been one of the main areas that continues to find buying pretty quickly on any conflict issues. And then you're just seeing relative weakness throughout many of the other currencies. So when you look at from the ag side, a stronger dollar is generally more bearish for U.S. exports. And I'm just curious if, one, it's helped money really short the hog market because we have been near a record short position there. You're maybe seeing some demand problems both domestically and export-wise potentially relative to what the supply has been, which is near unchanged. And just a few things I thought worth mentioning when it comes to if money flows into anything, whether it be currencies or equities or ag commodities, etc., where is it going? Seems like the U.S. dollar's been a pretty easy place for that to go lately, and that's been a little bearish on all grains, hog market, things like that, I think, lately.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the perspective on that because I do think it's impactful. The other thing that we have to combine with the dollar discussion, the export market, is just our our prices versus some of our competitors. And I know we've hit on that in the past too, but that gap has widened a little bit in the past couple of weeks, where even though we've been kind of disappointed in the values that we're seeing here in the U.S., some places like Brazil and Canada have been dragging quite a bit harder than what we are. So they're quite a bit cheaper than us today. And then throw in all the stuff that you're mentioning about a dollar being a little bit stronger here. I think that's very real from an export standpoint. Now, the data that we've seen through April would be very impressive. That would say that we got no issues as far as pork exports leaving the U.S. But you start looking at some of this weekly information, it's tailed off a little bit. We've been able to pinpoint Mexico on some of that, but some of the Mexico situation is also cheaper meat in Canada, higher U.S. dollar, a little bit less buying power from the Mexican peso, right? So no, there's no doubt in my mind that is a bit of a headwind for us right now. And where it goes from here, Trump's trying really hard to get some energy prices down, right? And having some success at doing that. I know he was out telling gas retailers that they got to get their prices down. So we'll see if they listen to him or not. So, maybe we can get some things going there where the inflation data doesn't look quite so bullish for the U.S. At the same time, one of our question marks, since we kind of ran into some of the doldrums that we're experiencing today, it lines up very well with the higher fuel prices. Mm-hmm. So are we seeing a little bit of a tweak in domestic demand because of fuel prices? And if that is true, can we get some of that demand back here the back half of the summer if we can get the prices lower at the pump? I think there's some real possibilities there that we get a couple good guys heading our direction here in the next couple months.
And pork as a protein is already competitively priced in the United States to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. So it's not like you're really asking for it to do anything new, just a little bit of marketing opportunity, and away we go. So what else do you have for us here this week to wrap up?
Well, the one thing I wanted to mention, we talked about how we can probably see this seasonal increase in the cutout value as well. We got to be a little careful with that because August futures, it went up. It's went up some here in the last 7 to 8 trading days, and now is posting a really big premium to where the nearby index is at. So basically, what I'm saying there is August has quite a bit of good news priced into it already, Mike. So it's anticipating this seasonal rally and cutout, unfortunately, when it's trading up in that $98 area. Last thing I've got is we are all heading over to MPIC over in Wisconsin Dells here in a couple of weeks. Pretty excited about one of our topics out there. Maybe going to take about half of our breakout session, Mike, is we're going to do a pretty deep dive into how we are looking to utilize artificial intelligence, and we've got a new product coming out that we're going to be launching out there in Wisconsin. We're going to have some of our technology team out there talking about, hey, this is really what we see as AI being a part of our business and how it might be able to help us on the risk management side, maybe how it can help the producers out there as well. So check that out. Be watching your inboxes for some invites and come see us out there.
All right, and don't forget to click the link in the description below. You can access our daily market commentary, other market research as well you may find interesting. Go to our website at professionalagmarketing.com. There will be tons of things ready for you to take advantage of when it comes to marketing opportunities. Thank you, Jeff, for spending the time with us here today.
Thank you, guys.